Alright, welcome to our geometry low-level problem review. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to teach you how to set these problems up, but I'm not going to be finishing the problem for you. So this video will help you as a guide for how to solve the problem or why we're doing what we're doing, but it won't necessarily give you the answers. So number one says find the measure of angle ABM. Well, I see that from A to B to M is this angle right here. Now let's talk about some things that we know. We know thing number one, we see these two sets of tick marks. That is indicating us to the side AB is congruent to side AM. Now if I know that I have two sets of congruent sides, I know that I have an isosceles triangle. That also means that this down here must be a base angle, and this must here also be a base angle. And by default, we know that this angle that is in between two congruent sides is our vertex angle. So what's our method of solving when we're given a base angle and a vertex angle? Well, remember this base angle is actually there twice, so we write 2 times the base angle, so 2 times 8x plus 3 plus 36, and we know that all three angles must add up to 180. Now guys, let's say that you solve for x. Alright, let's say you solve for x. You're going to have to do that on your own. The question is once again asking for angle ABM, so we know that that was down here, and that was the angle 8x plus 3. So whatever you solve for x, well, you're going to have to plug that in to here and get your final answer. And I'll use 2 question marks just to indicate it's a different number than x. Alright, let's move on. Okay, here in example 2, it says find the length of PJ. And guys, I always want you to identify, look, PJ is this whole thing, so I'm going to kind of do that and label it the whole. We're also given PC, let me give PC here, in purple, we're given that PC is 6 inches. Okay, well if you will recall, PC is the short side, and CJ here, let me even use a different color, CJ here is the long side. And so we know that we can do this. We can always do 2 times, switching back in the purple, 2 times the short side will in fact equal the, switching back to green, the long side. Okay? So 2 times the short side is equal to the long side. Okay, well what am I telling y'all basically, guys? I'm telling y'all if you do 2 times the short side, which in this case is 6, well, of course, that is going to give you all the long side, which is 12. So I know that this is 12. The last thing I would say is this. We know that this is a part. We know that this, the 12, is also a part. And our rule will always be part plus part is equal to the whole. So I'll leave y'all to finish the problem out from there, and I'll see y'all in our next problem. Okay, here we are in our third example. Let me write a little 3 there where you can see it. And it says, which of the following below represents the possible values of x? Remember guys, this is the triangle inequality theorem. And what does the word inequality mean? It means unequal, alright? And it states that any 2 sides must add up to be greater than the third. So let me call this A, let's call this B, and let's call this C. We're saying that, you know, A plus B must be greater than C. Now there's a way that we can always set this up. Because what do we really know? We know that our missing side, this CB, or let's call it X, it can either be too short or too long. So, how do we find out when it's too short? You find out when it's too short by subtracting the larger number given minus the smaller given. And we say that this number must be less than X, which must be less than. And how do you find out when that side X is too long? Well, you simply take your numbers and you add them. Now, I will leave you to subtract and to add on your own to finish this problem out. Also, notice that each of these symbols must be less than. They cannot be less than or equal to. Okay, here we have example 4. It says, by what property are the triangles below congruent? Well, guys, notice we have this arrow here and that arrow there. That is indicating that these 2 sides are in fact parallel. In fact, let me kind of draw dotted lines through them. we're saying that this line and this line are parallel to each other. Well, recall we have something called alternate interior angles, which state that that angle must in fact be congruent to that angle due to this transversal right here cutting through both parallel lines, essentially. So remember, these are called alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles. And they are congruent. Now, if those are congruent, well, then these must also be alternate interior angles. The last thing that we note is we're given this little line right here, and we're given that little line right there, showing that those two sides are congruent. So notice we have an angle, we have a side, and we have an angle. And of course, that more or less answers this problem for y'all. Let's move on. Okay, here number 5 says find the length of CL given QL is 14. Now guys, this one is a little bit trickier. We know that QL is the whole, and it is the whole line. It's also 14. And we are looking for CL. So the question becomes, how do you go from the whole to the long side? And check it out. Here's going to be our rule. To go from the whole to the long side, what you want to do is you simply want to multiply by 2/3. I'll say it one more time. We'll simply take the whole thing, 14, and multiply it by 2/3. Now, what if we had wanted to go to the short, whoa, that's weird. What if we had wanted to go from the whole piece to the short side? Well, you'd multiply by 1/3. Alright guys, let's move on to our next video, and I'll see y'all there.